New Canaan, Connecticut, is the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked and their expensive cars idling in the driveway. It is a gated, manicured paradise for the ultra-wealthy. Yet, on a quiet May afternoon in 2019, that illusion shattered. Jennifer Dulos, a mother of 5, walked her children to school and simply ceased to exist. When police finally breached her pristine home, they didn't find a struggle or a body. They found only a haunting, rhythmic trail of blood smeared across her garage floor. A crime scene that had been scrubbed with surgical precision, yet still screamed of a violent final act. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more cases. This helps us a lot, thank you. Jennifer Farber inhabited a world where wealth whispered. Born into a highly prominent New York family, her life was insulated by the kind of generational security that breeds intellectual pursuits rather than material hunger. Her father was an immensely successful banker, a man who anchored the family in profound financial privilege. Yet growing up in Manhattan, she never felt the need to flaunt her status. She attended the finest private institutions, eventually finding her way to Brown University. Friends from her youth remembered a woman deeply immersed in literature, theater, and the arts. She was a writer, introspective, empathetic, and relentlessly observant. She avoided commanding a room with loud declarations or flashy displays, preferring quiet corners where she could analyze the human condition. Later in life, this deep introspection poured into a personal blog detailing the chaotic, beautiful reality of raising a large family. Her prose was gentle, showcasing a profound vulnerability. Her ultimate ambition was never corporate dominance or societal clout. It was motherhood. She envisioned a home that felt like a true sanctuary. By the time she reached middle age, that dream had materialized into 5 children, who became the indisputable center of her gravity. Fotis Dulos operated on an entirely different, almost frantic frequency. Raised in Athens, Greece, he arrived in the United States with a ravenous, consuming ambition. While Jennifer's environment taught her to downplay her affluence, Fotis viewed wealth as a weapon, a mechanism to carve out a place at the absolute top of the social hierarchy. He was undeniably charismatic, possessing a relentless, almost predatory drive to win at all costs. This hyper-competitiveness manifested early in his obsession with competitive water skiing. It was not merely a weekend hobby. It was a lifestyle requiring extreme control, physical endurance, and aggressive forward momentum on the international circuit. He demanded physical perfection, maintaining a sculpted physique that mirrored his desire for total dominance over his environment. He also attended Brown University, though their social circles barely brushed against one another during those undergraduate years. Fotis subsequently earned an MBA from Columbia Business School, setting his sights on building an empire. He founded 4 Group, a boutique real estate development firm in Connecticut. He didn't build mere houses. He constructed sprawling 10,000 square foot luxury estates. He was selling an aspiration, a curated image of flawless American success, while simultaneously attempting to inhabit it himself. His business model relied heavily on optics. He required the right European SUVs, the bespoke suits, the right zip code. The psychological baseline of this narrative rests on a fatal contrast. Jennifer sought emotional stability, artistic expression, and a nurturing environment filled with warmth. Fotis chased aggressive expansion, rigid aesthetics, and unyielding control. For a man whose entire identity was tethered to outward perfection and financial dominance, the quiet, unpretentious nature of old money was both deeply alluring and endlessly frustrating. He was a builder of intricate, hollow facades. She was a seeker of emotional truth. Fotis needed to project the image of the ultimate patriarch, a titan of industry, standing proudly in front of a photogenic family. Jennifer simply wanted the family itself. The collision of these 2 worldviews set the stage for a silent, creeping psychological warfare. Their lives intersected again a decade after college. A chance encounter at an airport in Aspen, Colorado in 2003 reignited a connection that had previously been little more than a passing acquaintance. Fotis pursued her with a suffocating, calculated intensity. For a woman deeply rooted in her family, and perhaps seeking a strong, decisive partner, his unyielding focus felt like devotion. They married in August 2004 in a lavish, highly curated Manhattan ceremony. Almost immediately, the couple left the dense anonymity of the city for the sprawling, affluent suburbs of Connecticut, laying the groundwork for the Four Group. The centerpiece of their new life was a custom-built monument to Fotis's ambition, a 10,000-square-foot estate on Jefferson Crossing in Farmington. It was a fortress of wealth, featuring 6 bedrooms, expansive manicured lawns, and an aura of absolute perfection. To the local elite, it was the pinnacle of the American dream. But behind the heavy oak doors, the foundation was entirely borrowed. Fotis was not the self-made titan he projected. His high-end real estate developments were hemorrhaging cash, subsidized almost entirely by his father-in-law. The wealthy New York banker extended millions of dollars in loans to keep the Four Group afloat. Fotis played the part of the visionary CEO, while quietly drowning in a deeply concealed, mounting debt. While the husband chased prestige, the wife focused on their growing family. They had 5 children in rapid succession, including 2 sets of twins. Yet, as the financial pressure on the business intensified, Fotis's need for absolute control mutated. The charming, attentive suitor vanished, replaced by a rigid, tyrannical presence within the home. He began imposing strict, grueling regimens on the children, particularly forcing them into highly competitive water skiing. This was not a recreational weekend hobby. It was a mandatory performance designed to reflect his own desired glory. He demanded physical perfection and absolute obedience, treating his children more like athletic assets than kids. When Jennifer attempted to buffer them from his escalating demands, she became a target. The emotional abuse was systematic. He belittled her, gaslit her, and actively worked to undermine her authority as a mother and her sanity as a human being. The psychological claustrophobia was absolute. She was trapped inside a gilded cage, financed entirely by her own family. The final irrevocable fracture occurred in 2016. Fotis did not simply step out on his marriage. He brought the infidelity right to their doorstep. He met Michelle Troconis, a glamorous Venezuelan businesswoman and fellow water skiing enthusiast, at a private club in Miami. Rather than hiding the affair, Fotis brazenly integrated the new woman into his life. He began taking international trips with her and eventually moved her and her teenage daughter into the Farmington mansion, while his wife was still desperately trying to hold the family structure together. He flaunted the affair, creating an agonizingly toxic environment. Court documents later detailed how he threatened to take the children to Argentina, promising she would never see them again if she did not comply with his demands. The fear she felt was no longer just emotional anxiety. It was visceral, paralyzing terror. She documented his terrifying volatility, explicitly noting her belief that her husband was entirely capable of physical violence. Survival demanded a tactical, silent retreat. In June 2017, while Fotis was away on business, Jennifer executed a meticulous escape. She packed up the 5 children and fled the Farmington estate, relocating 70 miles south to a rented, sprawling home in New Canaan. From that fortified position, she filed for divorce and sought emergency custody. In her initial affidavits, she stated plainly that she knew filing for divorce would enrage him and that she legitimately feared for her life. What followed was a brutal, agonizing 24-month legal war. The docket swelled to nearly 500 court filings as the estranged husband fought tooth and nail, not necessarily for the welfare of his children, but to maintain the optics of control and punish his wife for leaving. He demanded unsupervised visitation. He demanded psychological evaluations. He weaponized the legal system to bleed her dry. Meanwhile, his financial safety net completely evaporated. Her father had passed away, and the family estate formally sued Fotis for over $2.5 million in unpaid, defaulted loans. He was locked out of his family, humiliated in local social circles, and facing total, insurmountable financial ruin. By the spring of 2019, the pristine public image he had spent 15 years constructing was actively disintegrating. The walls were closing in, leaving a desperate, cornered man with everything to lose, and a terrifying willingness to take back control. Friday, May 24th, 2019. The sky over Farmington is still a deep, bruised black. The temperature hovers in the low 50s. Fotis is awake, operating with rehearsed mechanical precision, He does not take his own black Ford F-150 Raptor. That vehicle is too recognizable, too heavily tied to his corporate identity. Instead, he takes the keys to a 2001 red Toyota Tacoma belonging to his project manager. It is an older, unassuming work truck, a ghost vehicle carrying no GPS tracker and lacking modern telematics. Before turning the ignition, he makes a critical, highly calculated decision. He leaves his personal cell phone plugged into an electrical outlet at the Jefferson Crossing mansion. It is a digital anchor. If investigators ever pull cellular tower data, the electronics will insist he spent the entire morning safely at his desk. Michelle Troconis remains behind at the estate, instructed to manipulate the device, answer incoming business calls, and maintain the elaborate illusion of a normal, busy workday. The drive south begins, 70 miles down the Merritt Parkway. The route traces through the affluent spine of Connecticut, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through dense, waking forests. The highway is largely empty at this hour. Fotis does not drive directly to the property in New Canaan. He knows the gated communities are heavily monitored by private security cameras and automated license plate readers. Instead, he navigates to Lapham Road, a quiet, heavily wooded stretch of pavement running adjacent to Waveney Park. It is approximately 3 miles from the target location. He parks the Tacoma on the dirt shoulder, cloaked by the heavy canopy of oak trees. He steps out into the crisp morning air and unloads a vintage, dark-colored French bicycle from the truck bed. It is a bizarre, almost archaic choice of transport, but highly effective. It has no license plate. It registers on no cameras. He pedals the remaining 3 miles through the manicured, labyrinthine streets. He slips past towering hedgerows, wrought iron gates, and sprawling lawns, arriving at 69 Wells Lane completely unnoticed. He breaches the detached 3-car garage. He secures his position in the deep shadows. The cavernous space smells of cold concrete, expensive motor oil, and damp earth. A Porsche and a Range Rover sit silently in their respective bays. The middle spot remains conspicuously empty. He waits. The silence is absolute. Inside the main house, the morning unfolds in a chaotic, deeply loving rhythm. 5 children are awake. Breakfast is served in a rush of voices and clinking spoons. Backpacks are loaded. Jennifer operates in the familiar, comforting routine of a mother managing a large brood. She moves with purpose, her focus entirely on her kids, completely unaware of the threat waiting just beyond the interior door. They pile into her 2017 Chevrolet Suburban. The commute to the New Canaan Country School is brief and uneventful. She drops them off, smiling and waving goodbye as they walk toward the entrance. It is the last time they will ever see her. The time is exactly 8:05 a.m. Residential surveillance cameras capture the massive black Suburban, rolling steadily back down Wells Lane. Jennifer presses the remote. The heavy wooden garage door rumbles upward. She pulls the SUV into the center bay. She puts the transmission in park. She cuts the engine. The mechanical hum of the garage door lowering seals the space. The daylight is abruptly cut off. Fotis steps out of the darkness. The ambush is absolute, vicious, overwhelming. No screams penetrate the thick, insulated walls of the structure. The confrontation is immediate. Zip ties are deployed. Heavy plastic wrist restraints. The cold concrete floor transforms into a brutal battleground. She fights. She fights back with sheer, desperate, adrenaline-fueled terror. The forensic evidence left behind tells a story of unmitigated savagery. Blunt force trauma, sharp, erratic, violent movements. Blood casts in long, terrifying arcs across the polished side panels of the Range Rover. It splatters against the front fender of the Porsche. It pools rapidly on the floor, creeping steadily toward the central drain. The strength disparity is simply too great. The struggle is catastrophic. The heavy silence returns to the garage. Only the sound of ragged, heavy breathing remains. Fotis transitions instantly from attacker to cleaner. The timeline is incredibly tight. The family nanny is scheduled to arrive at the house by 11:30 a.m. The clock is relentlessly ticking. He steps into the kitchen, his shoes tracking red across the threshold. He grabs a large roll of paper towels and heavy-duty black garbage bags. He drops to his knees. He begins frantically scrubbing the porous concrete. It is an impossible, losing task. The liquid sinks deep into the microscopic crevices of the floor. The thin paper towels shred and disintegrate against the abrasive surface. He uses a mixture of water and household chemicals, desperately trying to dilute the evidence. The harsh smell of iron and bleach fills the enclosed space, creating a sickening chemical fog. He furiously wipes down the vehicles. He bundles the soaked, ruined paper towels, the severed zip ties, and the bloodied clothing into the thick plastic bags. In his frenzied haste, he makes a critical, irreversible error. He steps squarely into a pooling puddle, leaving a perfect, crimson impression of his shoe near the passenger side of the Suburban. The extraction begins. He wraps the remains tightly. He lifts the heavy, plastic-bound shape into the rear cargo area of Jennifer's own SUV. He throws the vintage bicycle in alongside the bags, scratching the interior trim. He climbs into the driver's seat, gripping the leather steering wheel. At 10:25 a.m., the garage door opens. The Suburban rolls out into the late morning sun. Fotis steers the vehicle away from Wells Lane, retracing the route back to Lapham Road. He parks the SUV near the Waveney Park hiking trails. The audacity of the move is staggering. Dog walkers and joggers are already moving through the woods, enjoying the spring weather, completely oblivious to the horror parked mere yards away. He works quickly, fueled by adrenaline. He unloads the black garbage bags and the remains from the back of the Suburban, transferring the heavy cargo into the bed of the red Toyota Tacoma. He leaves Jennifer's vehicle abandoned right there on the side of the road. He does not take the keys. He leaves the transmission in park. Blood is pooling quietly, sinking into the carpet of the rear cargo space. Fotis climbs into the cab of the Tacoma. He turns the ignition. The old engine turns over. He pulls away from Waveney Park, merging onto the highway. The drive back north to Farmington begins. 70 miles of open road, the shattered remnants of a family resting quietly in the truck bed, completely hidden from the passing traffic. At 11:30 a.m., the sprawling house on Wells Lane sat entirely silent. Lauren Almeida, the family nanny, unlocked the front door, expecting the usual mid-morning rhythm of her employer, preparing for the afternoon school run. She stepped into the foyer. The stillness was immediate and heavy. Walking into the kitchen, she noticed anomalies that meant nothing in isolation, but together painted a deeply unsettling picture. A half-eaten granola bar lay on the granite counter. A mug of tea sat untouched, completely cold. Her employer's purse, containing her wallet, identification, and cash, remained resting on the floor. A woman meticulously planning a trip to Manhattan does not leave her purse behind. The most chilling detail was the most mundane. A fresh roll of paper towels, placed on the counter just the night before, was completely missing. The timeline was rapidly fracturing. The missing woman had a strictly scheduled orthodontist appointment in New York City at 11 a.m. She was fiercely punctual, a trait necessary to manage a chaotic household of 5 children. When the medical office contacted friends to report the no-show, a wave of digital panic initiated. Texts were sent, voicemails were left. Every single communication dropped into a black hole of radio silence. The nanny paced the first floor, the unease mutating into a cold dread. She stepped out into the garage to check the vehicles. The black Suburban was missing. The Range Rover sat quietly in its bay. As she moved past it, her eyes locked onto a subtle imperfection on the driver's side door handle. A faint, reddish smear. It had been hastily wiped, leaving a thin film against the metallic paint. Her brain refused to process it as blood, categorizing it instead as spilled coffee or paint, a psychological defense mechanism against the unthinkable. Afternoon dragged into early evening. The children were brought home from school by a friend, their mother's absence now a glaring, terrifying void in the house. By 7 p.m., the threshold of rationalization was obliterated. The local police department received the call. A welfare check was requested. Patrol cruisers turned onto the long driveway, their tires crunching against the gravel. Officers approached the residence, expecting to find a stressed mother who had misplaced her phone, or perhaps a sudden medical emergency. They breached the garage. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The air was thick with the harsh, sterile odor of chemical cleaners, a scent that had no business lingering in an affluent residential garage on a Friday evening. Flashlights cut through the gloom. The officers observed sweeping, unnatural wipe marks across the porous concrete floor. It looked as though someone had desperately tried to erase a massive spill. They requested a forensics unit. When technicians applied chemical reagents to the floor, the hidden reality of the space violently illuminated the darkness. The concrete glowed with the undeniable, sprawling signature of a brutal struggle. Blood spatter arced across the walls and the remaining vehicles. It was not a missing persons case anymore. It was a homicide scene. Simultaneous to the forensic realization at the house, a patrol officer conducting a standard sweep of Lapham Road noticed a 2017 Chevrolet Suburban parked off the shoulder. It sat near the heavy tree line bordering Waveney Park, roughly 3 miles from the residence. The plates matched the missing woman's registry. The vehicle was completely abandoned. The transmission was locked in park, the keys absent. When investigators peered through the tinted rear windows, they saw the final, grim confirmation. Dark, pooling stains soaked the carpet of the rear cargo area. The tactical perimeter instantly expanded. By Saturday morning, the news detonated across New Canaan. This was a municipality where violent crime was essentially a statistical myth, a town insulated by vast wealth, private security, and manicured boundaries. The illusion of safety evaporated overnight. Residents who had not locked their doors in decades suddenly engaged deadbolts. Security companies received frantic calls. The community descended into a collective paranoia as news helicopters began circling the airspace, their rotors chopping the quiet suburban atmosphere. The media descended, transforming the idyllic streets into a sprawling broadcast stage. The terror was amplified by the unknown. A mother had been violently erased from her own home in broad daylight, and a predator was seemingly operating seamlessly within their gated paradise. A massive multi-agency grid search was activated. Waveney Park transformed into a militarized zone. Over 300 acres of dense Connecticut woodland were heavily sectioned off. K-9 units tracked scent trails through the thick underbrush, their handlers pushing through thorny thickets and deep mud. State police drones equipped with thermal imaging swept the dense canopy from above. Dive teams, weighed down with heavy oxygen tanks, breached the dark, murky waters of the park's ponds and nearby municipal reservoirs. They waded through deep silt and tangled aquatic vegetation, blindly searching the freezing depths for any trace of the missing mother. Every overturned log, every freshly dug patch of earth, every discarded piece of trash sent a spike of adrenaline through the search crews. Hundreds of civilian volunteers combed the perimeter, moving shoulder to shoulder in straight, methodical lines. Days bled into a grueling week. The physical exertion was matched only by the mounting psychological dread. The operation yielded nothing but immense frustration. The sprawling park was a void. The perpetrator had engineered a terrifyingly efficient vanishing act, leaving an entire town paralyzed by the ghost of a woman who simply no longer occupied the physical world. The initial phase of the investigation was suffocating. Detectives stared into a digital void. The primary cellular device belonging to the estranged husband proved he was 70 miles away in his home office at the exact time of the abduction. The Wells Lane security system had been carefully sidestepped, the camera angles completely avoided. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on heavy mahogany doors, but the manicured silence yielded no witnesses. A highly organized predator had slipped through the cracks of one of the most surveilled zip codes in the country. The red Toyota Tacoma was a phantom, leaving no initial trace on the residential grid. The first 48 hours produced only dead ends, mounting public pressure, and the terrifying realization that the crime scene had been sterilized by a professional. The facade cracked not through high-tech surveillance, but through a project manager's creeping unease. Detectives interviewing 4 group employees encountered a man whose daily routine had been violently disrupted. The worker explained to authorities that his boss had demanded an impromptu vehicle swap that Friday morning, leaving him with the luxury Ford Raptor while commandeering the aging red pickup. When the truck was eventually returned, it had been aggressively detailed, smelling strongly of industrial cleaners. The employer then issued a bizarre, forceful directive. The employee was ordered to discard the rear seats entirely and purchase replacements on the company account. Gripped by suspicion, the worker did not destroy the hardware. He quietly stored the original seats in his own garage. When forensic technicians eventually tore into the fabric, they found microscopic damning remnants of the victim's blood. The ghost vehicle was finally tethered to reality. Armed with the truck's visual identity, detectives bypassed the local neighborhood cameras and pulled regional highway feeds alongside automated license plate reader data. The digital breadcrumbs formed a hard, undeniable line down the Merritt Parkway, tracking the precise southern trajectory from Farmington to New Canaan. But the most devastating visual evidence was waiting in the gritty, urban sprawl of Hartford. Investigators acquired the suspect's secondary, burner-style cell phone data, tracing a frantic, erratic path along Albany Avenue on the evening of the disappearance. They immediately subpoenaed dozens of municipal street cameras covering the bustling commercial corridor. The resulting video playback was a masterclass in brazen arrogance. The footage showed the black Ford Raptor crawling down the busy city street under the glow of amber streetlights. The suspect was firmly behind the wheel. Michelle Troconis sat in the passenger seat. Over the course of a 4-mile stretch, the heavy truck stopped precisely 30 times. At each location, the driver emerged and casually deposited dark plastic garbage bags into random municipal trash cans, commercial dumpsters, and shallow storm drains. The urban environment was being utilized as a massive, fragmented burial ground. In one particularly chilling sequence, he was recorded shoving a flat FedEx envelope through a rusted sewer grate before wiping his hands and returning to the cab. Law enforcement initiated a massive, synchronized race against the city's sanitation schedule. Detectives wearing hazmat suits dug through the urban refuse before the local garbage trucks could obliterate the trail. The physical haul was staggering. From the depths of the Hartford dumpsters, they pulled the twisted, blood-soaked architecture of a murder. They recovered discarded ponchos, torn surgical gloves, severed zip ties, kitchen sponges saturated with crimson, mutilated clothing that matched the missing mother's DNA profile to a mathematical certainty. From the dark water of the storm drain, divers fished out the discarded envelope. It contained 2 altered license plates bearing thick adhesive tape, used to mask the red Tacoma's identity during its journey south. The surgical precision of the garage cleanup was completely undone by the chaotic, desperate disposal in the city. Search warrants rained down on the Farmington estate. State police tactical units breached the heavy oak doors, tearing through the home office. Resting among the meticulous business files, they unearthed a terrifying piece of psychological evidence. Detectives secured handwritten documents they quickly dubbed the alibi scripts. The pages contained highly detailed, minute-by-minute schedules dictating exactly what the suspect and his accomplices were required to tell police regarding their movements on the day of the assault. It was a choreographic blueprint for deception, complete with scripted phone calls and fake meetings designed to construct an impenetrable timeline. The dragnet closed abruptly. Arrest warrants were executed for capital murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The architect of the crime was stripped of his bespoke suits and locked in a stark holding cell. His financial empire was reduced to rubble, his reputation annihilated, and his control completely severed. Yet the ultimate psychological manipulation was reserved for the end. He absolutely refused to face a jury or surrender his final ounce of autonomy. In late January 2020, facing an emergency bond hearing that would inevitably return him to a maximum security prison, he orchestrated a cowardly exit. When officers arrived at the Jefferson Crossing mansion for a court-mandated welfare check, they found him sealed inside the sprawling garage. The engine of his luxury SUV was running smoothly. The enclosed space was flooded with thick, lethal carbon monoxide. Paramedics dragged him onto the driveway, attempting furious resuscitation efforts, but the toxic gas had already completed its work. He chose asphyxiation over accountability, slipping out the back door of the justice system and ensuring he would never sit in a courtroom to answer for the terror he unleashed on his own family. With the architect of the violence gone, the immense weight of the judicial system pivoted entirely to the surviving co-conspirator. Michelle Troconis faced a Stamford courtroom in early 2024. The charges were severe: conspiracy to commit murder, hindering prosecution, and tampering with physical evidence. The trial became a grueling, weeks-long deconstruction of her shifting narratives. Prosecutors systematically dismantled her initial interviews, utilizing the very street camera footage and digital telemetry she had helped generate. Her defense attempted to frame her as an unwitting pawn, a naive partner completely ignorant of the slaughter. But the evidence told a story of active participation. The jury was shown the coordinated cellular manipulations, the handling of altered plates, and her undeniable presence during the Hartford disposal route. The forensics were absolute. The jury deliberated briefly before returning a sweeping guilty verdict on all counts. The court handed down a multi-decade prison sentence, finalizing the legal reckoning for her role in the cover-up. Yet, for all the meticulous legal dismantling, the victory felt inherently hollow. A conviction could lock away the accomplices, but it could never extract the final crucial truth from a man who had permanently silenced himself. The Farmington mansion now belongs to someone else. The corporate empire is erased, yet the most agonizing reality of this case remains unresolved. Jennifer has never been found. The sprawling woods and dark reservoirs of Connecticut hold a secret they refuse to surrender. Her 5 children are now growing up under the fierce protection of her family, carrying her gentle memory forward. It is a final, haunting reminder that an obsession with absolute control ultimately leaves a man with nothing, destroying everything he touches before finally consuming himself. If you are finished watching, you're a real fan of true crime. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and give it a like. See you in the next video.